Welcome in, Saints fans. Inside Black and Gold, Steve Geller, Jeff Nowak, and we are prepared for a game day. Actually, Sunday in the Superdome, the Caesar Superdome. Got to give them the naming rights credit, obviously. Kansas City Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champs in town. Get to see a lot of Black and Gold players in action that we've been anxiously waiting for during these training camp sessions. We'll get caught up on some news and then even get into some of the guys we are got that shining the spotlight on for that game on Sunday. An indoor session just wrapped up today, Jeff, and definitely a lot more agreeable and enjoyable to watch, not having to suffer the elements out in the heat. Although, you know what? I'm sure everybody's sick and tired of hearing about the whining of how hot it is.
Yes, I was not planning to complain about the heat, but I can't help it. If you always bring it up, Steve. Anyway, just kidding. But not really. Anyway, we're gonna get into the spotlight players. We're gonna pick some spotlight players, offense, defense, to watch. That's gonna be the third segment. In the second segment, we're gonna break down some of the key takeaways from the first unofficial depth chart. We got that over the last couple days, and there are some interesting things in there that are worth diving into. So, but this first segment, yes, news and notes. The last time we talked to you, it sure seemed like the Saints were about to sign Kareem Hunt and Anthony Barr, but wouldn't you know it, they did not. They got out of town without contracts. I'd imagine those deals are still on the table, but who knows? Kareem Hunt didn't actually work out. He left. He had a meeting and left. The Colts were allegedly offering more money. I don't know. He didn't get a deal there either. So we'll see. The Saints are continuing
signed the
to
running back, the Colts.
They did sign a running back. I can't recall who it was, but the Saints are gonna continue working guys out. Reports are that Jalen Smith was in there today. I would imagine there were multiple players that they had in there working out. So I'm sure we'll find that out by the time this podcast airs to make us sound uninformed, but that's fine. Jalen Smith, linebacker, who came up with the Cowboys, former Notre Dame guy, played for the Giants last year. He was pretty bad for the Giants, in my opinion. I don't think he's the answer for the Saints. I honestly don't think Anthony Barr was the answer for the Saints either. Everyone got really excited when they hear that name because it's a name they know. But guys,
Right.
these guys are still on the market for a reason. Like, that's the thing. It's like Anthony Barr is not going to save the Saints season. Jalen Smith is not going to save the Saints season. These are depth signings, especially at this point in their career. So I think that's what always happens. We get these big names. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, this guy. And then it's like, yeah, whatever.
I will say I think the Jimmy Graham signing is a little different just because, he was off the market last year and really was like, if I'm not going to play for the Saints, I'm not going to play for anyone kind of deal. So definitely interested to see how number 80 thrives in this offense because he's looked good so far in camp. But not expecting those exorbitant numbers we're used to from the past.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham's a fun story. It's worth talking about whether he contributes a lot or not. And he's looked solid. We've seen him catch a couple passes. He was active in the 2-minute drills the other day, caught 2 passes in a row. He's just a guy who brings an element that no one else on this team does, which is that guy's 6'7". You can throw the ball up there and he can go get it in a spot that other guys can't. And, whether they're able to take advantage of that, it is something. It is a reason to have him on the roster, right? And then you look at some other guys and it's like, whatever. But let's move forward. One thing that's going to happen this week, well, by the time you listen to this podcast, it probably has already happened. We're recording this on Thursday. Friday morning, the Saints will be practicing in the Superdome. It is not open to the public, but they are going to practice in the Superdome, get acclimated to the dome. There's a new turf in there. It's a different type of turf, which, maybe it'll help mitigate some injuries. I don't know. I don't understand how turf is different from turf, but it is a different turf. So they're going to get used to it and play there on Sunday. There will be a special attendee who, is in town for a very specific reason.
We know Saints great, legendary Drew Brees, and he's got a pickleball tournament celebrity matchup against John McEnroe Saturday. But he's in town promoting the first annual NOLA Pickle Fest, something he's help bring to New Orleans along with some other folks. And we'll be out there during Thursday, Friday sports talk 4 to 8, checking things out. And curious to see how it all unfolds. I have yet to play pickleball. I'm a ping pong player, and I don't know. I'd try a doubles matchup against Drew.
Yeah, see, I don't think I could deal with doubles pickleball. I would need to have singles pickleball because, like, yeah, you watch doubles and it's just like they're literally just standing there going clink,
See, I can handle just the
clink,
standing instead of the little bit of running you may
clink.
have to do around.
I'd get bored. I'd get so anyway. The noise would also drive me insane. It's just like click, it's like the like Monty Python with the
Yeah,
coconuts. That's what I always think of when I hear that. Just click, click, click.
that will be something definitely I'm interested to find out too, because we're supposedly broadcasting right off of Championship Court there. So we're going to be hearing a lot of the.
Yeah, you'll hear it in the background incessantly. It's just like a piercing click. That's just hollow. Anyway, it is something. But yes, that is why Drew Brees is in town. You know, man, I don't know if he's going to talk at Saints camp. It'll be good to hear from either way. You can listen to WWL. We will have him on twice. We'll have him on Thursday and Friday. So check any of those interviews out.
He's our new pickleball correspondent.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
He's our new pickleball correspondent.
Yes. He couldn't hack it as an NFL broadcaster, but he's gonna start the PNN, the Pickleball News Network.
Yes, indeed.
The pun. Anyway, going forward, speaking of someone else who's thriving, Chris Olave. We've seen him. You know, Rashid Shaheed has been out, so Chris has been getting a lot of targets over the last week. Rashid Shaheed's dealing with a groin injury, so has Traquan Smith. So we've seen Derek Carr really go heavy to Chris Olave. And, I don't know what I expected this offseason in terms of he was really good last year. He caught 72 passes, over 1,000 yards, I think 4 touchdowns, something in that range. You know, everyone's talking about how great Garrett Wilson was. I was watching Hard Knocks, and they were like, the Saints or the Jets drafted the best offensive and defensive rookie last year. And Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. And I was like, that's debatable. That's not just a statement. Like, you're saying that as if it's a fact. I mean, he had almost an identical season to Chris Olave. He was good. I think he gets credit because he was catching passes from Zach Wilson a majority of the season, or whoever it was, Mike White, right? So I give him credit for that. But Olave was dealing with Andy Dalton. So anyway,
we still have the Andy man over here. So still,
right. Anyway, like I think Chris Olave, I think, is getting overlooked in a lot of ways across the NFL. I think the Saints are getting overlooked in a lot of ways across the NFL. Now that Drew Brees isn't here anymore, Sean Payton isn't here, everyone's kind of just ignoring him. But I think Chris is poised for a big year. I was talking to Bobby Hebert about this today, and that I wouldn't be surprised if he easily leads this team in receiving yards. There is a scenario where Mike Thomas ends up catching more passes than Chris if Mike plays 14 plus games. But I think Chris, in the yards per catch advantage he's going to have, he could easily 1,400, 1,500 yards if things go the right way, if he stays healthy. Because the connection he's showing with Derek Carr already is impressive.
Yeah, that's definitely looked really good in the early goings here. And for me, everyone seemed to talk about Olave's frame, not being a guy that can make those contested catches. I won't say he's bulked up, but he's definitely maybe toned up. He's got more muscle tone to him. And you have seen more of those contested catches being made this camp, and that definitely makes me happy and will surely make this team happy as well, because there were a few instances last year where you wished he just looked a little tougher.
Yeah, I think he said he bulked up to about 187. Last year he's playing at about 180. And, you don't you talk about bulking up at the wide receiver position. You do have to be careful, right? Especially for a guy who's that smooth, whose main advantage is just, quickness as opposed to maybe top end speed. Like, he just gets in and out of his breaks really smooth. He transitions well, and that's how he gets open. So you don't want to sacrifice that for maybe a little extra bulk on your frame to help you in those instances. You gotta split the difference there. And I think he has. We saw him in one-on-ones today. He caught all 3 of his reps, all 3 from Derek Carr, all 3 pretty much the same way. He was, outrunning a guy to the corner of the end zone. The ball got laid over the top, and he just went up and got it. He snagged it. Late hands, went and got it. And that's the type of catch that I don't think we saw from him last year. I make the jokes that Chris Olave is always open. And if you go back and watch his highlight tape, most of his catches, I'd say probably 90% of his catches last year, there was no defender anywhere near him to make a play on the ball. And you'd still like to see him make a lot of his catches that way. It's the 10% that you'd like to see where, okay, yeah, he didn't create 5 yards of separation. You just need a catch here go up and get it. And here's what Dennis Allen had to say on that subject when he got asked about it today.
Yeah, look, I think it's been good. I think Chris is really coming along. I think he's improved a lot. It's been good to see him make some of those contested catches that we've talked about. He's still a great transitional route runner at the top of the route. And I think him and Derek have, gotten a pretty decent rapport.
I was talking to a few people about fantasy football kind of stuff with the Saints. And to me, Olave and Taysom Hill are definitely the big buys for me on the team this year. I think, we saw Taysom's involvement with this offense reach a high last season. I think he can even beat that coming into the year. He's talked about, being more of that receiving threat. And just with Olave, really excited to see that sophomore season. I'm expecting the surge, not the slump from him for sure.
Yeah, I am curious to see where he goes in fantasy drafts. And, Taysom is interesting mainly because you can play him at tight end. I don't know what to expect from him from an output perspective this year. Because even though I think he is going to have a significant role, there's a lot of mouths to feed on this offense in ways that was not the case last year, particularly in the run game. With Jamal Williams, you got to get him on the field. And they're trying to bring in a Kareem Hunt, right? If they add another running back that's like, well, you're bringing him in because you're going to play him, and then Kendre Miller, who I think has looked really good. I've been very impressed with Kendre Miller. And I just don't, the only question for me is how do you get him on the field? How do you get him a reasonable amount of snaps? So I just don't know. I think you're going to use Taysom Hill, but like, for instance, in the red zone, when you have Jamal Williams, are you going to lean on Taysom Hill the way you did last year? I don't know. So that's the question for me. But
yeah, and you have a new big man we just talked about too, with Jimmy Graham to throw into the end zone too. He's a pretty good target.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we talked to Taysom Hill today, and he does seem like he's a little more comfortable with his role, but at the same time, it's always changing. That's kind of the nature of his role, and that's what makes it so difficult to defend, is no one knows what it's going to be week to week. He doesn't know what it's going to be week to week, and that's kind of where you're at. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But here's what Taysom.
I don't know. I think the short answer is yes. But I will say, like, even I go out to practice, and frankly, I still don't really know what I'm all going to do. But I know I'll either be blocking, throwing, or running or catching, So I don't know. I just, again, I think game plans change and guys get injured. And, I suspect that throughout the season there's going to be, just some of this stuff where maybe I have a few more carries. Maybe there's a game plan where I have a few more receptions, and maybe I throw it a couple more times and, what we've done in the past. But I don't know. I kind of expect that and just stay ready, stay on my toes,
I like that. It's like, well, I'm going to be blocking, running, throwing, or catching.
That's I know that.
But that's honestly, that's not even it, because he got asked, it was like, because Blake the other day when we talked to Blake Gillikin, he said he called him the best personal protector in the league, which he probably is. And he was like, yeah, because anytime we can run a fake, right? And and the Saints didn't run any fakes last year with Taysom Hill. I don't think they ran a fake kick at all. And so it's like, but the other team has to always be on alert for it, because it can happen at any time. And so, that's part of it. But I also think Blake was just saying, like, yeah, he's really good at it. Like, he's good at that job. He can relay information really quick, effectively, because he's a quarterback. I just thought that was interesting.
I love the usage so far we've seen of Taysom. There was talked about, at least going into camp, wanting to be more of a receiver, and I feel like we have seen him catch at least more passes in camp so far. We'll see if that translates to game days.
He had one stretch a couple days ago in a 2-minute offense that he caught 4 consecutive passes. I think it was 5. He caught the last pass on a Derek Carr set to set up a field goal, and then he caught the first 4 passes of the Jameis Winston set. So he got 5 consecutive passes, which was like, is this called? Like, what is happening? Yeah. So I mean, he's being involved. The funny thing with Taysom is he only wears one glove. because he's got the quarterback thing. And so that's not helpful. Like if he's going to be primarily catching passes, I'd like to see him put on another glove. But if he did that, he'd probably kind of tip his hand that he's not going to be throwing. So it's kind of
I do know. I just remember last year too, Taysom fantasy wise, you were all over that, and I know that paid off big time.
It did. Well, it won me 1 week just specifically. I wouldn't say it was a huge boondoggle for me, but I did win that when week 5 because of him, because he had 4 touchdowns that week. And that completely, like, I should have lost that week, but I had my tight end got me 40 points. Anyway, moving on. So one other thing we can hit quickly is the favorite thing. I'll do this. This is the favorite thing I heard this week, and that is the term helicopter punts, because that is something that the first time I saw it in practice, I was like, what did he? I thought Blake Gillikin had missed. I thought he just he had just shanked it, and it just came off like spinning wildly. And I was like, well, that can't possibly be what he was trying to do. And then he kicks again. He does the exact same thing. I'm like, well, I guess he is trying to do that. And so I asked Blake earlier this week, kind of what goes into adding things to your game. Because as a punter, you kind of look at it like, okay, I can punt really well. Like, I do all of the things I have to do. But like, how often are these guys like, how often is the meta changing, right? Like the most effective tactics available. That's what that stands for. Like, how often does that change? Because as a punter, it used to be like coffin corner and you used to do this. Now you're adding all this spin and trajectory. And so I asked him about that, and I thought his answer was really interesting.
There's new stuff that's come about the last couple of years. Guys are starting to hit helicopter punts, which are really tough to catch. Johnny Hecker was the first to do it in the game. He now plays for Carolina, so we see him twice a year. And he's done it against us. So just kind of trying to incorporate that in my game also, whether we need it. Yeah, so you have your spiral punt, you have your end-over-end punt, which spins backwards. Yeah. Helicopter punt, you kind of drop sideways and it spins to the right. It's supposed to kick to the right. And those are really tough to catch for the returner because they go up this way and then snap back down at the end. So whether using that in just a regular game situation or when we need a turnover on the punt team, just kind of adding that to my arsenal has been kind of a focus this offseason.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because a lot of times you watch a punter, you don't really think, okay, how is he punting it? And in this case, it's like, okay, well, we really need a turnover here. We're trying to make a comeback, so I'm going to kick this wildly spinning helicopter ball that this guy's going to have to either try to catch or get the heck out of the way. And it's tough to get out of the way of because it's going to take this kind of crazy sideways carom that you can't really gauge. So it's just kind of interesting. And, I think for Blake, we talked about how one of the things he's working on this year is consistency. He admitted that there were points last year that he let the team down late in games. The game against the Bengals, I'm sure, is case in point what he was probably referring to when he said that. And he dealt with injuries last offseason. He's feeling healthy now. So I don't think that punter battle is much of a battle anymore. I think we've seen what we need to see out of Blake. But yeah, keep an eye out for the helicopter punts, because the first time you see it, you're gonna be like, what the heck is that thing? Because it looks exactly like it sounds. It is just spinning horizontally like a top.
Yeah, and like you really aren't used to seeing it. So like you said, you're like, oh man, he really must have hit that thing wrong. But yeah, interesting to find out. Obviously, Gillikin looking to add more and more to his bag of tricks too. You're always looking to learn, and I would love to have some turnover special teams as a result of that. That'd be pretty cool.
Right. Well, you kind of think about, okay, what's an onside kick for the punter? It was just like a wild thing. It's funny because like stuff like that does change. Like there are tactics that occur to people that actually change the game a little bit. I started watching Hard Knocks, and then the first episode of Hard Knocks, they have this whole thing about no-look passes, and everyone's trying no-look passes because Aaron Rodgers does it all the time, and he does it so subtly that you don't even notice it until you're like paying attention. Like, oh, I guess he wasn't. Because Drew used to do that. Drew would do that, and he would never call it out. There was the game against the Lions in 2020. I remember spotting one where he was just, and it's easy to tell because you can see the lines on the back of his helmet, so you can tell where he's actually looking, and then he just goes drink, and he throws it to Traquan Smith, just standing by himself. And just stuff like that is fascinating to me. It's just very nuanced that you wouldn't even notice if you're just watching it on TV, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, why couldn't he field that punt? Oh, because he tried to catch it and it was like, anyway.
You mentioned Traquan there. We didn't get into the injury stuff at all, but yeah, he's still out. Rashid Shaheed, Demario Davis, Andrus Pete, of course.
Yeah. What I will say is that the injuries that were the injuries that we talked about are still the injuries that exist, right? There are no new substantial injuries, which is a good thing. You know, we still don't have to. Go ahead.
I guess Merritt leaving today, what was it, a hamstring, and he had been bothered by that before, so just something to look out for him.
You're also talking about Kirk Merritt here. Like I'm talking about starters. Right. I'm talking about Demario Davis, Rashid Shaheed. Those are the two that are actually concerning to me.
Yeah, the headliners.
You know, your fifth string running back leaving practice early. That's not something that, you know, it's like, well, I'm rooting for Kirk. I hope he makes the team, but it's not something I'm like, oh no, how are they going to possibly, you know, deal with it anyway? Because like if you end up having to start Jalen Smith instead of Demario Davis, that is a massive difference. That is a massive blow.
We don't want to even think about that. La 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 la. I can't hear you.
Before we go, I will say I think DeMarco Jackson has looked solid. I haven't been ashamed of him as a player, right? Like he looks like he can do the job. I just, you know, he's effectively a rookie. He didn't play last year, and you don't want to trust significant snaps to that guy right away, or even in the season. Like you want him to be a filling guy. He did play well in coverage today. I saw him break up a pass to Michael Thomas. I think he's got a good skill set. I think, you know, maybe 2-3 years down the road and be like, oh, maybe he's the starter, but I don't want that to be week 1 of this season. So yeah, those injuries are going to be something to watch. I'm still not overly concerned about it. We're still a long way away from the regular season starting when those games missed actually matter and those practices missed actually matter. But yeah, the injury bug is the injury bug.
Yeah, and like you said, I don't think there's been anything too serious. Obviously, we've had a few guys that have, you know, gone on injured reserve, but thankfully none of the same, you know, all-pro caliber like a Demario Davis, and what we're hoping we see from a Rashid Shaheed, who was looking so darn good before suffering that groin issue. And you know, those injuries can be a little temperamental. You don't want that to linger.
Yeah. And I mean, again, we're 3 weeks away still from even, you know, close to a game week. So yeah, the worst thing you could do is bring a guy back when you are not confident they're 100%, and then they re-injure that, and suddenly you're dealing with something a lot worse. And I think that's probably what you're looking at with a Traquan Smith and a Rashid Shaheed and stuff like that. We did see Zion Williamson working out.
Right. It was like breaking Pelicans news.
Well, I thought when I saw him out there, I looked at him and I was like, is that a player the Saints are working out? What is going on? And then they were like, oh, wait, it's Zion. He just looks like a football player because everything about him screams football player, until you're like, wait, okay, yeah, he plays basketball. But he plays it like a football player would.
Yeah, you know, what's cool about the whole Saints Pelicans setup, it's like Benson campus there, basically, because you have the two teams' facilities right next to each other.
Yeah, it just makes it difficult to park sometimes because there's two teams trying to share.
No, you see, the problem with the parking is for some reason the players don't want to go into the gated player parking, so they end up in the media lot. I don't know why that's the case.
And you can always tell.
Oh,
because there's a big difference between a player's car and my car.
Oh, that wasn't your blue Bentley, Jeff?
Oh yeah. I left my Bentley at home today. I didn't want anyone to be embarrassed. But yeah, I believe that was Marshawn's Bentley.
That's what I thought too, because of Ohio plates, and I was like, that kind of swag seems like Marshawn.
But yeah, like there was this like palatial looking truck that pulled in, and I was just like, it was like a $50,000 truck, and I was like, that's not. Yeah, and there's a player that's going to be climbing out of there. It was Alvin. I was just, it's like, yeah, okay, fine. He parks next to me, who drives a Chevy Spark, which is the smallest car you'll ever find.
Well, I joke too. I'm driving around in a '99 Camry. '99.
Yeah, you can tell that is very much a 2-decade-old vehicle.
Yes,
I can tell. I've been in it. Still drives. The engine works.
And amen. The air conditioning still works too. Knock on wood.
There you go. But all right, let's wrap up this segment. We're going to come back and we're going to break down the Saints' first unofficial depth chart. What stands out? What to keep in mind? What battles to watch? That sort of thing. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Check us out on YouTube at WWL Sports. Check us out on Twitter at Saints_pod. I'm on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. He's at Steve Geller WWL. The latest news and notes on the Saints can be found at WWL.com. And stick around on Inside Black and Gold.
Do it.
And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Subscribe. Have you subscribed yet? You should do that. If you haven't subscribed yet, why not? Hit the subscribe button. Do it. Anyway, moving forward. The Saints play a preseason game on Sunday, which means that we got the first unofficial depth chart, which also means we got a lot of ORs. Not OARS, ORs in terms of either or. And so that's just the first step in kind of identifying what position battles we're imagining and which ones are actually happening. And so I put up a post on WWL.com if you want to go check it out. It's just basically, here are my 5 biggest takeaways from this depth chart that I'm flashing up on the screen. If you want to check it out, go on YouTube, WWL Sports. And, the first one to me is one that I have been talking about for a while, and it is that I think James Hurst is the starting left guard on this team. And I think this is the Saints' way of agreeing with that, because you look at that, Andres Pete or James Hurst. Now, don't read anything into the order with which the names are written. If it's an or, then that means it's 50-50. You have to list one guy first. It does not mean that they're ahead. But, we haven't seen Andres Pete in over a week. He has missed, I want to say, 8 consecutive practices. So if there's a battle going on here, if this is an actual position battle, I think it's been pretty one-sided.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's the same old story with Andres Pete right now. The thing is, with his calf issue, we haven't even seen him back at all practicing on the side, limited work. So it's just curious case of, Andres Pete as usual kind of thing. And yeah, until we can see him, you can't be playing unless you're, on the field kind of deal. So yeah, right now, James Hurst definitely your starting left guard.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that position battle to me is very real. And if Andres Pete was here and healthy and playing, I think it would be interesting to watch. In this case, right now, you have to give James the clubhouse lead, and maybe Andres comes back and just blows everyone out of the water, but that's tough to do as a guard. There aren't splash plays you can really make. I don't know. I don't expect it to happen. I expect James Hurst to start there. So I thought that was
didn't Penny mention having a comfort level with Hurst too?
Yeah. Because he's played with him, because he's worked with him. Right. Like, it's not that complicated to figure out why that might be, because Andres hasn't been there. And James is also just a guy. It's like, there's a reason we talk to James as like as a leader of that group, because he is a very impressive personality, right? Like, he's a guy that I would want the young left tackle to kind of, be a sponge to, because he's had a 10-year career out of doing nothing but working hard. Anyway, so we talk about the position battle that is real, because there's an or next to it. Now let's talk about the one that is not real. It is a figment of your imagination, and it is Taysom Hill and Juwan Johnson. That is not a position battle. It's not. Juwan Johnson is your starting tight end, and this is, to me, that's indicating that that's completely true. Taysom Hill is your starting Taysom Hill. And I think you put or here because you do want to indicate it's like Taysom. Yeah, Taysom's whatever you want to call him. He's a starter. There's no such thing as a flex. But, he's not in contention to take Juwan's snaps. I asked Taysom Hill earlier this offseason if he even considers himself a tight end. He said no. So, like, if you're looking at that and saying, oh, wow, why would they take away Juwan's snaps and give them to Taysom? That's not actually what's happening.
The biggest question at tight end, I would say, is, are they going to keep 3 or 4? And that includes Taysom in the mix, obviously.
Yeah. So
there's
I
your
think
4 right there. Yeah.
I think you keep 4. I do. And I think the question to me is, how do you platoon Jimmy Graham and Foster Moreau? I think Foster could end up being the odd man out a lot of weeks, because you are keeping Taysom in the action and you do want to get Jimmy reps. And, do you need Foster as a blocker? I think you do. But yeah, I think that's going to be a weird position. I consider it like you're keeping 3 tight ends and 1 Taysom.
Yeah, the guy, it's hard to put him in any one spot. So yeah, you just have to consider him Taysom 1 of 1, not Jameis 1 of 1.
Right. There are a couple other notes that don't involve roster battles, and I can just say, like, right now, so yes, this is a roster battle. You're not gaining any information from this depth chart, so I'm not going to spend any time talking about it because, like, we knew it was a roster battle. All we know from this depth chart is no one's won it yet. I think Paulson Adebo is slightly ahead. I think that's been the case from the beginning, and I haven't seen anything to change that. But again, this depth chart isn't telling us anything about that, so I'm just going to move on from that. Go ahead.
I will say a little surprised. You look at the defensive end. There's no Orr with Granderson and Turner there.
Well, yeah, I was saving that, but we can go into that now.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that is one of my 5 takeaways. If it's on that list that I put up, so I'm glad we're on the same page. Yes. So one thing that's clear is this isn't necessarily a position battle. Carl has won it, and I think for good reason. He has played very well. He's been one of the better players at camp. I think Peyton has also played well. You know what? And I'm okay with it. I think you're going to have a rotation there. Peyton Turner's going to get plenty of snaps. Carl is going to get plenty of snaps. And if they're both productive, fantastic. You're better for it. What we have seen is the Saints have been going to more NASCAR packages. I think they're going to incorporate that more often, where maybe you have the one run stuffing defensive tackle in there, and you take the other defensive tackle off and add an extra defensive end on. It's usually something you go to on pass downs where you're not really worried. You have one guy you need to double team, and you have the other guys all get up after the passer. So I think there's going to be opportunities to get all 3 of Cam, Peyton, and Carl on the field at the same time. But I agree with you. I think that is telling that, they're not even projecting that as a battle. They're saying Carl Granderson owns that spot right now.
And throwing in a little bit of Tano Passanio has been someone we've taken notes on too, but unfortunately, guys, man, still, nothing from rookie Isaiah Foskey, really. Maybe we'll see something in these preseason games, or hopefully we see something in these preseason games, because, just in practices, there really hasn't been much of a standout of anything for Foskey.
No, he's learning. I don't think he's going to make much of an impact earlier in the season, maybe on special teams, but he's going to make the roster. You know that. Tano, I think Tano is kind of the platoon for Cam, who never comes off the field anyway. So it's not exactly, it's a clipboard holder kind of thing, I think, because I do think that Peyton would get the rotational reps with Carl before Tano, and I think that's why you see it listed this way. But yes, Isaiah Foskey, I don't expect to see him on the field much. And I'm fine with that because you do have the depth, right? Like, I'd like to see him come along. I'd like to see him stay healthy. He hasn't missed a practice. Neither has Peyton Turner. But
you expect them to see a bunch Sunday though, right? I'm just saying, not regular season.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're gonna see Isaiah. You're probably gonna see starters. I don't know how much you're gonna see, but you're probably gonna see starters. But yeah, I think Jake Haener, Isaiah Foskey, you're gonna see both of those guys an extended period in this game. But one other thing that I think is worth noting, if you look up here, it says Landon Young as your backup left tackle, and that's a change because previously he's been your backup right tackle. That is now Storm Norton. And I think we've seen that in camp thus far is Storm has lined up behind Ryan Ramczyk and taken the snaps when he's out. When Ryan has been out, which has been frequently because he is on a program that worked last year. It's the same program he was on last year, and his knee held up well. So they was like, okay, let's do it again. And so whenever Ryan's been out, it's been Storm at the starting right tackle spot. So you say, okay, what's happening with Landon Young? He's made the roster the last 2 seasons as the backup right tackle. What are you going to do with him? We've seen him at left tackle. We've seen him at guard. We've seen him working around. And while that is a positive thing for him, like generally speaking, in terms of being able to do more, I think in this case, it's a sign that he doesn't have a spot on this roster. Because when you look at the backup left tackle, it's actually James Hurst, who, if Trevor Penning went down in a game, you would kick Hurst to left tackle, and you would have Andres Pete start at left guard or go in at left guard, which means that on this list, Landon Young is actually third string. You just only list guys twice. So to me, that means he's not on the roster. And because I think before your third string left tackle, you would keep a backup center. So if you keep 9 offensive linemen, I don't think he's one of them. And you're kind of going to go from there. But I do think that's what this depth chart is telling me right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe James Hurst wouldn't be your backup left tackle. But it just seems crazy to me that you would have Landon Young take that over in a situation that you didn't have to.
No, I agree with you totally. Hurst would have to go to left tackle in my mind as well. We've seen him do it before. Has been a pretty consistent performer for the squad, obviously. Nick Saldiveri, an interesting guy to see what he's capable of. I know he's got versatility along the O-line. But yeah, I don't know if he's ready, to be that primetime player yet.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to me too, because you do have Saldiveri working at left guard. Which, I mean, I think there's a chance that Pete doesn't make it to the regular season. I don't think you're going to cut him, but he's a guy who has not been a backup in his career, right? Like he's been the starter, and I mean, who knows how he would take a demotion like that? I don't know. And if it became a problem, maybe you just move on from him. But yeah, right now you have Nick Saldiveri as your left guard. So I don't know if he would easily be able to shift across and play right guard. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Right.
You're flipping everything. But yeah, it's an interesting question.
And obviously not a big name either, but Coda Martin's a bit banged up right now, dealing with something. I forget what his issue was.
Coda Martin's cut. He's not on the roster anymore.
Oh, injury settlement. Yeah, so yeah, he's been done. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, he got cut yesterday, I believe. But all right. Going down, I think there was one more. Okay, yeah. So when we talked to Dennis Allen the other day, he kind of pointed out that they don't know who their backup off the ball linebackers are right now. It's something that is going to have to be decided in the preseason, and so I think that's what you see here. I think DeMarco is, while he says that, I think DeMarco is the guy who's going to be your second string middle linebacker, your Mike linebacker. Even if you bring in a Jalen Smith, I don't want to see Jalen Smith slot in ahead of DeMarco unless you're talking about the week 1 starter, where I don't want to start a guy at the Mike linebacker spot in his first career NFL game. That's a tough equation for me. As much as I like DeMarco, I probably would go with Jalen. If you're talking about week 12 and DeMario has played and DeMarco has backed him up and maybe got some reps here and there, maybe I'm different there. But either way, I think that's the guy. So when you're looking at this, I think the question is these two players, who can stand out between Nephi Sewell and Anthony Orji to be that backup will linebacker? It's tough because I don't know if Anthony has the coverage ability to be a will linebacker in the NFL. So I'm leaning toward Nephi. He's a smaller linebacker. I think he just profiles better to that spot. But that's going to be two players fighting for what I would consider to be one of the last spots on the roster.
Yeah, and I feel like Nephi's definitely been someone who's shown up a little bit more in these later training camp practices. We saw him obviously last year on this squad. Orji, it's going to be tough for the rookie, I think, to make the active roster. Seems like more practice squad to me.
I agree with that. So here's another one, a guy that I've talked about a good bit, Lonnie Johnson Jr. He's currently listed as your backup free safety. And I asked Dennis Allen about him the other day, and his versatility is going to be valuable. And I expect him to make the roster. He banged knees today. I think he's a little sore, but nothing significant. I think he's going to be on this roster, assuming nothing crazy happens from an injury perspective, or he just plays terribly. But yeah, I think that this being kind of listed as the backup free safety here is notable, because like you look at a guy like Isaac Yiadom, so he's technically backup here, the second string, but it's only because one of these guys, Alontae Taylor or Paulson Adebo, is going to slot back there. So he's actually third string. Jonathan Abram is listed as your backup free safety. So that's interesting to me, because are you going to keep all three of Jonathan Abram, JT Gray, and Jordan Howden? That might be tough. And you're looking at Jordan Howden, he's pretty deep on this depth chart. So maybe he's not as high up on this list as maybe we think. But again, I think that's just an example of reading a bit too much into this first unofficial depth chart, which past the starters and maybe the second string guys, I think it's kind of a toss up.
Smoke Monday is someone too that I feel like we've seen this week starting to push his name a little more to the forefront.
Yeah, he got an interception today. Tips and overthrows, baby. That's the name of the game. And Jake Haener kind of lofted a ball over Shaq Davis. I can't remember if it was Shaq Davis or James Washington. It was one of those. It was either 88 or 89. Tough to tell sometimes. But the ball just got over his head and Smoke was there. And that's the type of interception that while it seems simple, the Saints just didn't make last year. You did not get them. They did not exist. If the Saints got 4 or 5 of those last season, I think they make the playoffs. like those are the type of plays that change games because it's just a quick change and you give your offense a short field and you make it happen. You capitalize on the other team's mistakes, and instead you were the team making mistakes. So I think that showed well. Lonnie Johnson has also made it at least 1 interception, maybe 2. But that's it. It's an interesting battle. And I think the questions are going to come down to, right, you're looking at Lonnie Johnson, Smoke Monday, Jordan Howden. You can keep 2 of them. Who are those 2? Yeah, so that's going to be something. And one of the reasons that's the case is you are keeping Jimmy Graham. So you're keeping an extra tight end where you might have otherwise not. You are keeping Jake Haener. So instead of only having to keep 2 quarterbacks, you're keeping 3. You are keeping Taysom Hill. So those are 3 roster spots that in another season you might have free that you are dedicated to somebody because you can't cut them. Like you can't stash Jimmy Graham on a practice squad. Like you're not doing that. Either he's on the roster or he's not. So I think that's going to be the question. And I think a lot of times it'll come down to, can we get this guy to the practice squad or do we think he'll get claimed? Right? Like a Keith Kirkwood, as he's looked really solid. I know I can get him to the practice squad. Right? Like I'm not worried about that. So it's yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned too, Jake Haener today might have been his roughest, training camp session. When I say today, Thursday, he had an interception today and just had a shaky day all around. Otherwise, though, he's looked good and definitely someone obviously everyone's going to have eyes on for Sunday.
He had 2 interceptions today. He threw 2 interceptions. It should have been 3. There was a couple just bad decisions. One that overthrow to Smoke Monday was one of them. He had a ball tipped at the line by Malcolm Roach, who had a really good day, and it kind of fell into the arms of Jerron Cage, for the fun big man interception that everyone loves. And then he had another throw up the right sideline. Poor Ty Summers. He was in perfect position. The ball got thrown behind Foster Moreau. He reaches out, gets a hand on it, and I still don't understand how it happened. I was watching in real time, and I was like, what? How did Foster Moreau catch that ball? Because it looked like it deflected off of Ty Summers' hands. And if Ty never touched it, it was going to fly behind Foster. It was a ball that far behind him that he could not make a play on it. And Ty put his hand out. It bounced off his hand and deflected forward, right into Foster's arms in one motion. And you saw Ty on the sideline going he did the surrender cobra, oh no. So it's funny, and that's why you look at some of these notes out of camp, and you have to kind of read into it a little bit more than okay, so he threw a touchdown to Foster Moreau. They're not going to look at that on tape and be like, good job, Jake.
Yeah, right.
Way to get him.
Yeah, you just looking over things. Yeah, the stats can be deceiving a little sometimes, or the whatever you're reading, because it's not going to highlight how much of an amazing grab that was by Moreau.
I was incredibly lucky. But yeah, so yeah, I think this was a rough day for Jake, and that's part of the reason I have been so loud about okay, let's calm down, let's pump the brakes, is because he's a rookie. He's a 4th round rookie. He's going to have days like this, and you have to allow for them. You have to allow rookies to struggle. That's why I've always hated this idea that you draft a quarterback high in the draft, they have to start week 1. Bryce Young is going to be thrown to the Wolves. Anthony Richardson's going to be thrown to the Wolves. Look what happened to Zach Wilson. Look what happened to Sam Darnold. These were not guaranteed bad quarterbacks in the NFL. They became just hopeless quarterbacks because they lost all of their confidence. And once you lose your confidence, it's really tough to get it back. And so I think the Saints aren't going to do that with Jake. I think this is a redshirt season for him. But yeah, it was a rough day for him.
No, that's been one of the buzz or people starting to talk about, hey, do you think if Haener keeps looking the way he has, that he could unseat Jameis as the number 2 quarterback? And I just don't see that happening this season. You still want Jameis there that has that experience behind Derek Carr in case of emergency.
Yeah, DA got asked yesterday if it would be inconceivable to see Jake Haener unseat Jameis, and he said nothing is inconceivable, and all I could think is inconceivable from Princess Bride.
I don't know if it's an underrated movie, but definitely one everyone should see. That's a great flick.
I think it's rated accurately. I feel
Fun
like it's
one.
yeah. I don't think it's under or overrated. I think it is adequately rated.
It's one of the few that I actually showed my 13-year-old that he didn't turn his nose up to about it.
It's a good movie.
Yeah.
Got Andre the Giant in it. He can barely move, but he gets the job done.
Yeah.
I listened to a podcast recently about Andre the Giant. He used to drink like just gallons of liquor on a daily basis.
Oh, really? I wonder. Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder how much it takes him to get lit up.
Enough to like kill a small animal. Like most people would not survive. I say a small animal, a large animal. Most people would not survive the amount of liquor he would imbibe on a daily basis. He was just he was a giant in a lot of ways. Anyway, so let's wrap that segment up. That's kind of just the broad strokes breakdown. If you're taking anything more than that away from this depth chart, you're overreading it. You know, these are the very clear observations. Not like, ooh, they must like James Washington more than Kawan Baker, right? And it's like, maybe, I don't know. That could be true, but it's not what they're saying with this. Anyway, so let's move forward. This is Inside Black and Gold. We're going to come back and we're going to pick a handful of spotlight players that we are watching closely in this preseason opener against the Chiefs on Sunday. Not necessarily the biggest names, but the players that we're looking for. So stick around for that. This is Inside Black and Gold. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Hit the subscribe button. You can follow the show on Twitter at Saints_pod. Check out WWL.com for the latest Saints content. And in this final segment, we are going to break down the spotlight players for the Saints preseason opener. Let's start on offense. Let's start with Mr. Steve, as I learned he was called today by our spotter on the
Made me feel old for sure.
Mr. Steve. I'm
looking at running back and looking at the rookie Kendry Miller. We've seen him in training camp. Love what has been going on so far. Just more action for him in a live game setting scenario is going to be great. I'm still curious on what the team's thinking in general of wanting to bring in another running back and what that role will be, just because, with Miller and Jamal Williams on the forefront with the Alvin Kamara suspension, I thought they were looking pretty good there, but for whatever reason, they were still interested in someone like Kareem Hunt. So there's still obviously a need at the position, but just overall for me, Kendry Miller, want to see more of that shiftiness, ability to hit the hole, and we'll see if any pass protection or pass catching happens in Sunday's game against the Chiefs too.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, and it's mainly pass protection that I need to see him succeed in, because I think any rookie running back, I don't care if you're Bijan Robinson, I don't care if you're Tajay Spears, I don't care if you're Kendry Miller, if you can't be trusted in pass protection, you will not be getting on the field. Because if you can't be trusted in pass protection, that means the only ways you can get on the field are during rundowns. And if you're only getting on the field for rundowns, then you are tipping your hand as to what you're going to do. So that just can't happen. So that's going to be a big thing. And it's something that, generally speaking, is really difficult to rep in team-on-team practice.
True that.
Because you're not really hitting. Even the padded practices, you're not really hitting. So, on Sunday against the Chiefs, they're going to be trying to take Derek Carr's head off or Jake Haener's head off or whoever it is. And you got to be in there and you got to stop them. To some extent, that's going to be the case in the joint practices as well, starting with the Chargers next week. But, these are the opportunities you're going to have to prove that, no, you don't need a Kareem Hunt. I can be that guy.
Yeah. for sure.
All right. So, okay, let's go forward here. I'm going to take the easy way out on offense, and I'm going to say Jake Haener, right? Because as much as I've been kind of a jerk about this whole idea that okay, he's going to be a star immediately. These are the games that you really have to get an evaluation on. Whether it's to see what he has to work on or to see what he's doing really well right now. You're not going to get reps in the regular season. This isn't going to be so Kendre Miller. Maybe, he gets it. You're up big late in a game and he's going to get in. You're not going to do that with Jake. He's not going to be a guy you bring off the bench. He's probably going to be inactive on most game days, assuming both Derek and Jameis are healthy. Because you have Taysom as your emergency quarterback. You don't really need him taking up a roster spot. So you're going to have 3 opportunities plus 4 joint practices to get the best picture you can of what Jake can do. Do you think he can be the backup quarterback this year or next year? This is where you're going to find out. And this is where we saw Ian Book struggle. Everyone really liked Ian Book until we saw him get on the field and just did not have it.
Oh, that's rough.
He didn't have it. His first career pass was a pick 6. And while you could say, oh man, he was playing with a bunch of backups, the pick 6 wasn't a product of the backups. The pick 6 was a product of not being ready. He's in Philly now, so he's their problem. But that's mean. I don't hate Jake. I don't hate Ian Book, but that's my guy is Jake Haener. We're gonna see. I am curious just how many reps he gets because it sounds like we're gonna see Derek Carr. We're gonna see Jameis Winston after him. So does he get the whole second half? Maybe you have Derek Carr play a series. You have Jameis Winston play the rest of the first half, and then you have Jake play the second half. I don't think you're gonna want to have Jake play 3 full quarters. That seems like a lot. But this is going to be his first chance to show that you can be an NFL quarterback at whatever he is, 5'11". Yeah.
I'll say the other one too for me on offense is left tackle Trevor Penning. Obviously, we saw very limited action from him last year. The constant talk is great. He's great. He's a good run mauler. Can he hold up in pass protection? And obviously, that's going to be huge. We want to see more of that pass pro from the big man, and hopefully that foot can hold up too. Or both feet, actually, because it wasn't just one that suffered injuries.
Yeah, he made us nervous early in camp with that initial foot injury.
Yeah.
And it's one of those situations where, man, it's like, DA, stop telling us stuff like that. Like, if he's only going to miss a day with a minor injury, don't tell us it's a foot injury because that's just going to immediately have people freak out. I'm going to go home and write a headline that Trevor Penning has a foot injury, and everyone's gonna be like, oh my God.
Right.
Because you have to react to it. That's our job. And then he's back the next day. And it's like, guys, yeah, this is a thing. Anyway, it's so hopefully those feet can hold up. Because if he can get through this season without any major foot injuries, I'm gonna feel a whole lot more confident about him as a player. And it has nothing to do with his form or his technique. It's just like if your feet can't support you, then you cannot be an NFL left tackle.
No, and then we don't want to have to worry about, oh great, we have to worry about Trevor Penning's replacement and also Andrews Pete's replacement, and suddenly we're back to square one again. Like, oh no, this offensive line is patchwork and we're falling apart.
Yeah, I've had enough injury-prone linemen, and to be fair, linemen get hurt. It's not their fault. Like, it's just a position where you get hurt.
Contact every play for sure.
Contact every play. You're trying to anchor. You're constantly in a position where you can get rolled up on and do nothing about it. You can't protect yourself. And plus you're big. It's a lot of pressure. You're walking around with 300 pounds on your body all the time. They chose this life.
When we got to talk to Penning, though, obviously love the attitude right now. He seems really upbeat, positive going into the year. Just want to see it hold up and more development from him. And we want to see that first round talent coming through.
I definitely like his approach. I like how he's approaching this season and how he goes about his craft and his work.
Right. It was brought up today too, how he's not been that guy, starting fights. He's still someone who's working through the whistle, but has calmed down a bit with, getting into little fisticuffs with his teammates.
Yep. I haven't seen that happen this year, so good for him.
Not with him, right? There's been a little pushing, shoving from folks, but surprisingly nothing with Penning.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the defensive
Defense.
side of the ball. And Steve, who is your spotlight player on the defense?
Defensively, definitely, I'm going to say Alontae Taylor. I know what he's been doing, but I feel like when the lights come on, he's definitely a player that wants to show off and show out. So these preseason games, I think he's going to try and make some kind of, big plays to be that game changer, trying to make it clear that he is that guy that should be opposite Marshawn Lattimore more compared to Paulson Adebo. I think Adebo's been great too. We've talked about it earlier that really is one of the position battles that's legit. I'm excited to see Tate Taylor in action just because I dig his swag. I think he's just got that mentality about him, wanting to be that dude. And I'm just looking forward to that big play. We still need his first interception in a game. I guess preseason wouldn't count for that, but last season we saw some missed opportunities. And just coming into this season, I think he's going to put on quite a show.
Yeah, I am interested to see just how much the starters do play. We talked to Ryan Ramczyk today, and Dennis Allen said he expects starters to play. Ryan did not know whether he was going to play or not. So clearly that plan has not been fully established yet. So does a guy like...
To me, a little bit, I'm like, if I'm Derek Carr, I'm like, what do you mean you don't know if you're playing?
Yeah, I don't know. But so like, does Marshawn play, right? Because if Marshawn does play, then you kind of have to make a decision. Right, you got to have I almost think they don't have Marshawn play because you don't need to see Marshawn. And
good point, right?
If you do play Marshawn, then you will be forced to put one of those guys on first team and one of those guys on second team. And I don't think they're ready to make that decision yet. So I almost think that position battle alone is going to make it unlikely for Marshawn to play, because I think you want to get those guys on even footing and see what happens. But that's going to be something to watch. And so, yeah, if Marshawn does play, is it Paulson out there first? I think it probably would be. But yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. But I agree. Alante's always fun to watch. I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to see one of those guys make a big play and separate themselves, because this is where you can start to do that. But all right, let's
start creating that turnover mentality. We hear it a lot, like with sacks, they start coming in bunches. If we start building, the culture of turnovers early on, maybe that can continue throughout the season. I don't know,
but I think that's a good pick. I'm going to go on the defensive line. I feel like I know what I need to know about Carl Granderson. I feel like I know what I need to know about Colin Saunders, Nathan Shepard, Cam Jordan, all these guys. The guy I'm interested in watching is Peyton Turner, because I would love to see Peyton Turner make it impossible to keep him on the bench, right? Like I would love to see him work at a rate that's like, man, we got to find ways to get this guy on the field, because he does have the physical ability to dominate. He does. It's why he was a first rounder. And I know a lot of people were like, well, he was a first rounder because Sean Payton is crazy. And maybe that's a little bit true. But I mean, the physical ability he has as a 4-3 defensive end is legit. And we have seen it in very, very tiny flashes. Just, little flashes. Boom. He had 2 sacks in a game last year. And it's like, I just want to see him impact games. He's going to get, assuming Carl plays, which I don't see why he wouldn't, he's going to be going in there against second stringers. And I want to see him dominate those second stringers, right? I don't want to see him have no impact, be a non-factor. I want to see him go in there and show why he should be on the first team. And so he's my spotlight player. There's a lot of other options. You could have gone with a Brian Brzee. You could have gone with Nephi Sewell, but he's my guy.
Love the pick there too, just because I'm hoping Peyton Turner sees that depth chart and goes, you know what? I'm going to show you that I should be ahead of Carl Granderson, kind of thing.
Or at least in a competition with him.
Right. Yeah. And so that can be nothing but good news, I think. He knows that he's got to stay on the field. That's been an issue, and not being a healthy scratch during the year too either. But so far, so good from Turner, because I've been definitely critical of him and wondering if he is going to be termed, a quote unquote bust for this squad. Still too early for that, obviously, but definitely a guy that needs to show us something. And let's go. Game 1, preseason game number 1 in the Superdome. The atmosphere will be there all around the black and gold. And we'll see if he's a guy that can rise up to that occasion.
Yep. Yep, but I think that's going to wrap it up for us here on this episode of Inside Black and Gold. I know Steve has some pickleball he's got to get to. Got to learn how to do the little clink clink on the little paddles.
We joked about this a little. It's like I've never seen anybody try to do those finesse like drop shots or put like this big spin on the ball. Like even if you do in ping pong, but it's just been from what I've seen in pickleball, it's just a whole lot of volleying.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, so it's like, does anyone go in for the kill?
Doesn't seem like it. I don't see a whole lot of power shots going on in the pickle world. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Go ahead.
Who knows? Next year, when the second annual Pickle Fest comes around, maybe Inside Black and Gold will enter in the competition.
I don't want to.
Come on, it'll be good for ratings.
Ratings. Whatever those. But all right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Sunday. It'll be my first game on the sidelines this season. And then we're gonna head out to LA. So it's gonna it just feels like it's starting. It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like the season is here. Obviously,
enjoy the ride on the sideline. I know you got a taste of it last year, but man, oh man, I know you're gonna have a ton of fun, especially during the regular season when it really gets into those away games, because it's quite an experience that nobody and not many people get to have. So yeah, congrats to you on getting the gig, and have a blast. I know I sure did for the couple of years.
And then you gave it up like a fool.
Well, I
only had bad seasons.
My first year was the no call, and then
the worst season.
I was all dancing on the sideline, thinking I was going to the Super Bowl too.
Yeah, you took the hits. I'll get back to the playoffs here.
I hope you do for sure.
Yeah. But all right, let's gonna wrap it up here. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. He's Steve Geller at Steve Geller WWL. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. You should do that. Follow us on YouTube at WWL Sports. Check out Sports Talk 4 to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. Steve Geller's on there. It's WWL AM 870 FM 105.3 and always free on the Audacy app. It's also a fun app. We're on there. It's a good time. Check it out. But yeah, any parting words before we bid everyone adieu here?
Like you say, subscribe, like, and download. Please support Inside Black and Gold coming in year 2. And we forgot to mention to everyone, we just passed our 50th episode a couple weeks back, right? Or was it last week?
Of season 2.
Of season 2? Oh.
Yeah. We've already put out 50 episodes this season.
Woo,
which started after the draft. Where I have to go back and check. I mean, we're well past 100 episodes. I mean, we might be on 200 at this point. But yes, we have made it a full year officially. I think like August 7th would have been the year mark. So we
need confetti and streamers and balloons.
We've survived.
Woohoo!
Kinda.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. Who dat? Go Saints. Be easy, y'all. Peace.